Paris, winter of 1972. The most shocking cinematic masterpiece of the 1970s was unveiled. Millions of spectators lined up on the streets. Critics bowed down to the vision of director Bernardo Bertolucci. The crowd hailed the phenomenal performance of the legendary Marlon Brando. And at the center of those laurels was Maria Schneider. 19 years old, wild, instinctive, and completely defenseless. The public saw the birth of a dazzling star, but few knew that the girl standing on the red carpet that day was, in fact, the wreckage of a brutal scene of psychological manipulation. Let's look at the numbers. Last Tango in Paris brought in $186 million in global box office revenue. The return on investment, ROA, simply understood as the ultra-profit ratio pocketed by capitalists, broke every cinematic record of its time. A shower of money rained down on the system of film studios and those holding power. So, how much did the soul of that masterpiece, the leading lady Maria, receive for her naked dedication? $400. That was not a modest fee. It was a systematic financial exploitation. The power system paid her a paltry price to buy out the image, privacy, and trauma of a young actress. But financial exploitation was only the tip of the iceberg. The real slap lay in the event that took place on set, during the infamous butter scene. Consent, the final boundary protecting human dignity, was calculatedly stripped away. The director and the veteran co-star colluded to hide script details, forcing out the most authentic tears of panic. The pain and humiliation of a 19-year-old girl were turned into a tool to plow in revenue, carefully framed on 35mm film rolls. They called it art. In reality, it was psychological abuse legitimized under the flash of the lights. The velvet curtain rose. The illusion began to unleash its destructive power. Last Tango in Paris was not just a movie, it was a cultural shockwave. Bans in multiple countries, rigorous censorship trials, heated controversial articles, all transformed into a perfect marketing campaign. The more it was banned, the more money the corporate machine raked in. Public outrage inadvertently became fuel for the money-printing machine of the studio alliance. Bernardo Bertolucci and Marlon Brando stepped onto the podium of glory with prestigious Oscar nominations. They were canonized, becoming immortal monuments, courageous artists who dared to break artistic barriers. And Maria? The industrial machine immediately molded her into a global sex symbol. Audiences looked at the screen and believed they were admiring a liberated, free woman representing a new generation. Magazines competed to print her image. Men lusted after her. But it was a cruel, gilded cage. That title of symbol was actually a prison without bars. The Hollywood machine did not see a young actress full of potential or a human being bearing deep wounds. What they saw was merely a commodity, capable of stimulating the lust of the masses to maintain the flow of profits. Every script sent to her afterward clung to that naked image. Every interview was a cruel dissection, drilling deep into intrusive questions about the sensitive scene, forcing her to perform her humiliation over and over again. The glamorous facade of an international star concealed a cold truth. Maria was being chewed up by the very deceitful monument the capitalists had erected to sell tickets, while her cries for help drowned out amidst the thunderous applause of the audience. The door of Last Tango in Paris closed, but for Maria Schneider, that was when the door of a truly invisible prison opened. The entertainment capitalists are not in the habit of nurturing shattered souls. They only care about squeezing out the remaining commercial value of a hot name. Contracts began to fly in thick and fast. But let's carefully analyze the actual terms. They were not cinematic scripts honoring art or exploiting talent. They were cold legal documents, always accompanied by a hidden or explicit prerequisite: Maria must undress. From an actress stripped of consent on set, she was forced to turn herself into a sexual commodity on the industrial conveyor belt. Whenever she refused to appear nude, refused to recreate the sex symbol image, the doors of major studios immediately slammed shut. Her career was nailed to a moment of humiliation that the power system had deliberately designed to manipulate viewers. To survive in a toxic ecosystem, the human mind often seeks out defense mechanisms. For Maria, that mechanism was chemicals. Drugs appeared not as a depraved pastime of a lost young star, but as a brutal anesthetic to suppress post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Her medical records and stints in rehab throughout the 1970s reflected an undeniable truth. While Marlon Brando pocketed millions of dollars in revenue percentages and Bernardo Bertolucci was honored at international film festivals, their victim was struggling with drug-induced seizures and severe physiological breakdowns. From cocaine to heroin, Maria threw herself into the abyss of self-destruction. She spiraled down the corridors of psychiatric hospitals, where the stark white walls became her only defense against the media's hunt. The pen-wielders relentlessly gnawed at her wounds with sarcastic interview questions, digging deeply into her on-screen sexual experience. The industrial machine had excellently completed the extraction of the young girl's life force, preparing to toss her to the fringes of society when her exploitative value hit rock bottom. The cruelty of the Hollywood machine lay not only in creating tragedy, but in how it established an information blockade strategy to whitewash the crimes and isolate the victim. For decades, Maria Schneider's voice was completely neutralized. Whenever she tried to speak the truth about being coerced and humiliated, the system immediately operated its media apparatus to suppress it. They stuck perfect labels on her to destroy her credibility. Junkie, delusional washed-up star. How could the words of a woman with a history of psychiatric treatment hold any weight against great artistic monuments? This calculated ignorance was how the elite protected their cash flow and reputations. The peak of cold-bloodedness was only truly exposed in 2013 through a video interview with Bernardo Bertolucci, which went viral in 2016. In a chillingly calm tone, the director publicly admitted to colluding with Marlon Brando to hide the butter detail from Maria. He stated his purpose clearly. "I wanted her to react as a girl, not as an actress. I wanted her to feel the humiliation." Let's pause at this detail. This was not an occupational accident. This was an organized setup, a clear confession of stripping away consent. Simply put, men holding power deliberately trampled on the dignity and bodily boundaries of a 19-year-old child, just in exchange for a few seconds of authenticity for their film. Yet instead of being investigated or facing legal risks, they remained comfortably seated on the throne of power until the end of their lives. While the truth was buried beneath layers of flowery language from critics, Maria's biological clock had run out. Her body, after years of being ravaged by drugs, sedatives, and untreated psychological trauma, finally surrendered to cancer. The studio alliance that once pocketed $186 million from the work containing her sacrifice did not send a single cent in medical support. In 2011, Maria Schneider passed away at the age of 58 in silence and financial exhaustion. Not a single official apology was issued while she was alive. The cover-up was a resounding success. In 2018, Bernardo Bertolucci passed away. The cinematic world was plunged into mourning. International film festivals simultaneously honored him. The Hollywood media machine respectfully called him a great master of the seventh art. Earlier in 2004, Marlon Brando also passed away in the brilliant halo of an immortal monument. No criminal sentence was pronounced. No jury was summoned. The entertainment capitalists excellently completed their mission of protecting their darlings, from their golden age until they were lowered into the grave. But let us flip over the entire legacy they proudly left behind. Last Tango in Paris. To this day still naturally remains in the teaching curriculum at the world's top film academies. Critics continuously dissect camera angles, analyze lighting, and praise the pinnacle of psychological acting techniques. However, how many professors dare to stand on the podium and frankly confirm to their students a truth? The masterpiece they are worshiping is, in essence, a meticulously staged crime scene. History has been deliberately swapped by the power system. They succeeded in framing Maria Schneider as a miserable failure, a fragile fragment unable to withstand the pressure of the spotlight. They paid her a fee of $400 to legitimize the commercial contract. But in reality, it was a package robbery of the life, honor, and self-determination of a 19-year-old citizen. The intellectual property rights to the work, understood in the most pragmatic way as the right to broadcast, duplicate, and profit perpetually from Maria's naked, panicked image, remains securely in the safe of the Studio Alliance. The initial $186 million ultra profit did not evaporate. It was pumped into investment funds, generating profits over decades, laying the foundation for today's giant entertainment empires. Every single dollar bill in that macro wealth is backed by the humiliation, tears, and drug-induced seizures of a victim, completely stripped of a social safety net. Do not mistakenly think this is just a small stain of the past. It is a razor-sharp indictment of how the cinematic industrial machine operated at that time. Consent, the ultimate final boundary distinguishing between a human being and a commodity, was sacrificed as a scapegoat for what was called dedication to art. The abusers were shielded by golden Oscar statues, the exploiters were whitewashed by touching tribute speeches, and the victim was mercilessly erased from the map of rights. Maria Schneider was never a sex symbol as labeled by the media. She was a living witness and ultimately a dead victim of a brutal ecosystem. A place where capitalist men gave themselves the privilege of mentally assaulting women right in front of the lens, fully capturing that pain on rolls of film and tricking the whole world into lining up to buy tickets to admire their own crime. Next time, when you see the footage of Last Tango in Paris being praised on classic rankings, remember that 19-year-old girl. Do not look at her as a fictional character dedicating herself to the script. Look at her as a flesh and blood human being, permanently imprisoned in a cold documentary recording the exact moment her life was killed.